The president filed a suit alleging 4 basic things. One is they want a special master, which I said kind of late in the game for that, but they still, maybe they haven't completed the review. They've also asked for an injunction of further review of the material. In other words, stop it until the court makes a decision on the special master. They want a more detailed receipt of property because it was written like a general warrant, so they could get anything. And then finally, it requires the government to return any items seized that were not within the scope of the search warrant.
President Trump, through his undersigned counsel, respectfully files this motion for judicial oversight and additional relief. And it seeks an order, and there's 4 things here. A, appoint a special master.
Okay, so
let's start there.
The special master would replace the FBI's taint team, as it's called, which would mean that the FBI would no longer be reviewing their documents to determine whether there's privileges that attach to them or not, or whether the FBI should have those documents. That would then go to a special master, which is usually a retired judge that's appointed by the district court. The difficulty in this particular case is the FBI's had these documents for 2 weeks, so they may come into court, Jordan, and simply say, Judge, we've already reviewed them. It's already been completed.
Right.
So, but maybe not. So they're asking for
so many documents.
Yeah, that they're still in the review process. But this isn't. There's no set date on when this is being heard.
Because
right now the FBI can go through these documents.
The second part, B, enjoins further review of seized materials until the master's appointed.
So what that would do is say, let's say you have started the process, but there's, the New York Times is reporting 300 documents. Let's say they've gone through 100 of them. It would say stop. Do nothing. It's like an injunction until a special master is appointed.
So let's go to C. Require the government to provide a more detailed receipt for property. So that's just saying
here's what
these were too general.
So the Fourth Amendment, we said you violated due process, Fourth Amendment rights. Normally what that means is that you cannot have, not normally, the law says you cannot have a general warrant. That was what the king, like I said, the King of England did to the colonies. You can't do general warrants. It has to be very specific. But there was a provision stuck in this particular search warrant that's very broad. Jordan's got those. And that is where this whole general search warrant issue comes into play.
Because it's been 2 weeks, does that weaken that argument too? Or not as much?
Everything's weaker because they've waited 2 weeks, in my view. Now, if the warrant was unconstitutional because it was overbroad, that should not matter whether it's 2 weeks or 2 months.
Right.
Either it is. I've argued overbreadth cases at the Supreme Court.
Now, the second part about it is there's a Fourth Amendment issue raised. There isn't a specific call to action on that Fourth Amendment issue. Now, again, the search warrant's already been kind of like with the special master. These are things you might have done much sooner, but they have been filed now.
Here's what I would have done, okay, to be blunt. I would have moved to recuse the magistrate, number one. He should not have been hearing the case. He had the conflict. He removed himself from a case involving Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. He should have certainly not been the magistrate signing a warrant for a search of that then Donald Trump. So that made no sense. I would have moved that. Then I would have said that the search warrant itself was flawed. I would have moved to quash it, which means that it's not enforceable. And then I would move to have the evidence expunged, or basically that the evidence cannot be used and any proceeding has to be returned. That's what I would have done. Fruit of the poisonous tree, it's called. It's hard to do that 2 weeks later. So I think they're probably
would be considered by outside the magistrate, right? That would be by a judge, appointed judge. I would have filed that with the U.S. District Court, not with the magistrate judge. Yes. So deals with the issues with him, even because in that filing you're asking him to be removed.
Well, if you look at what they say right in the beginning of the lawsuit, it says under D, it says it requires the government to return any seized item that was not within the scope of the search warrant. So if it was outside the scope of the search warrant to be returned. Here's the problem. If you believe that the warrant was unconstitutional in the first place, everything should be gone.
The warrant, which we have a copy of, any government and or presidential records created between the day he took office to the moment he left office. Any evidence of the knowing alteration, destruction, or concealment of any government and or presidential record or of any document with classification marking. So again, they're not just about classified document, but any document whatsoever.
This is unprecedented in U.S. history. So it deserves the time we're giving it because this has never happened before. No former president has had their offices and home searched by the FBI, authorized by the current administration's Department of Justice against basically a political opponent. I mean, could you imagine if Donald Trump did this? What people would be saying?